Institute of Technology here in New York City. I have the esteemed privilege to be hosting a panel today with executives from
Columbus Consulting
and O9 Solutions. We have a very interesting topic that is called Don't Just Use Your Gut, which is something as industry executives I think we all like to do. So at this point, I'm going to hand over the program to Robin Lewis, and we will introduce our panel.
Thank you very much, Catherine. And we are also, the Robin Report is honored to be able to co-hosting this with FIT, and it's going to be a great conversation. So it's a great opportunity for our listeners to get into some thought leadership conversations that we're going to have, and also to be repurposed for students in your curriculum, Catherine. Anyway, now it is my pleasure to introduce our panelists. Rich Pedott is a partner at Columbus Consulting, and also, by the way, a Robin Report collaborative partner. We are very pleased to have you, Rich. And he is joined by Anjali Burkins, who is a retail strategy advisor at O9 Solutions. What does that mean? She helps prospective and current clients on their journey to digital transformation and delivering business results. And we want to thank O9 Solutions for actually underwriting this session. Okay, so now let's get down to business. Our conversation is a topic that is a particular obsession for me personally. Everyone is always talking about the magic power of data and analytics. But what I see out there is a lot of information, right? And very little intelligence, kind of like choking on data and starving for good information and knowledge. Anyway, so let's take a dive and figure this out. Rich, you know, we get that digital transformation is table stakes, and you have said that many times. And for the last few years, the retail industry has been touting how AI-powered analytics will transform all facets of the business. But exactly how does a retailer go about leveraging their data and introducing analytics in functional disciplines that have relied on gut instinct and intuition to drive results? So Rich, can you give us a little bit about that?
Well, sure. And I think you got to think about it. There are two key things that I look at when you think about how you're actually going to go about introducing AI-powered analytics or analytics into to functional areas where people have historically used their gut. And the first part I think is the people part, and then the second part is the data part. So, if we get into the people part, a story I like to use is, I call it Bill Bryan versus the machine. And you can tell by my white hair, I've been around the industry for a long time. And I remember back when I was a merchandise planner at Macy's, and this is when they were launching planning as a discipline. And I got to go to my first big tabletop show. And, and I was pretty junior in my career at the time. And there was this guy, Bill Bryan, and he was the China buyer at Bullock's, and he would walk into showroom after showroom, and I would see the CEO or the chief executives or the high-level executives of every tabletop vendor all of a sudden stop their conversation with whoever it was, and they'd all gather around Bill Bryan. And I, asked the sales associate that serviced us, so what's going on here? And I said, well, that's Bill Bryan. Bill Bryan is like the guy, he's like the Oracle of China, and everybody, he had unique gut instincts and insights, and everybody wanted to hear what Bill Bryan had to say. And that's kind of the world we come from, and the old legend of the merchant prince, and this whole reliance on gut. It's this person with this unique capability to interpret the market. Mm-hmm. And now the world is the world of the machine, and and all the boards are saying, okay, the magic bullet is AI powered analytics, and and you have to introduce these algorithms to get the insights to drive the business. So really it's this, people see it as this Bill Bryan versus the machine conversation, but it's really not that. That I think a key part in dealing with the change management issue you're going to take on when you start to do something like this is it's both. And it's really, how do these things coexist? And I like to actually say, look, AI is decision support. This is stuff that gives you an extra weapon and extra set of insights to do your job better. And what we're really doing is we're trying to figure out how we improve the customer experience. And this is just a new tool in our toolkit to do it. Right? So I think that's a key message that you want to start putting in from day one. And the other piece is, messaging to the human element on this, because the human element's really important. You are in control, right? We're going to put all of this in front of you and you're going to get all of these insights, but you're the one that decides how to use it, how to apply it. Do you need to override it because your intuition might be better than the insight, or do you actually get something that you wouldn't have gotten without the insights that you get from the intelligence? And as you go on these journeys, I think it's important to keep in mind that you need to go slow to go fast, and start from an area that people already understand, and can validate their conclusion against what you would get from a machine learning algorithm, and then you start to expand the complexity. I think the other key thing to put on the table early on something when you're talking about the people thing is you need to have a clear vision of what this is going to do for the business. It's not like a magic 8-ball that gives you the answer. You got to think about how you're going to use the AI, what the AI is really good at and capable of delivering versus what are things that people uniquely do. Like for instance, AI is not going to tell you if the product's a good product or not. A computer doesn't have 5 senses. It's not able to evaluate a product. What's it going to feel like? What's it going to smell like? Does it look expensive? And is it going to be appealing to a human? But what AI can do is it can do a lot of things at scale and make a lot of observations and process it into a coherent story for you. It can also challenge you and eliminate some of the biases that people have when they evaluate things. So, I think building that list of things that AI is really good at versus things that it's not so good at early on is important.
It's kind of like the balance of the art and science, right, Rich? And,
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Anjali, can you speak more to this?
I'd love to. Well, first, thank you for having me, Robin and Catherine. So I think AI in general, it encompasses so much, and I love how Rich kind of, weaved in the people inflection points of how it isn't just a machine, spitting out the outcome and the actions. There is a human element in there as well. And obviously the machine learning advances as there's richer data in the journey of digital transformation, which is very key. I come from a very seasoned merchandise planning background, and I really just believe the mindset of facts, not feels, which kind of speaks to not always following your gut, which is a funny story you just shared there with the Oracle and your tabletop experience at Macy's. I've definitely been there. I think an organization that has strong leadership that's embracing whether it's the KPIs that you're really looking to improve on the bottom line, is it efficiencies? I think all of those things are key when we understand what the motivation is and bringing in AI and machine learning components in the digital transformation. So the life of the SKU, I think of all the way from inception point, design and the beginning of the production piece, all the way down to consumption at the consumer level can be optimized. And I think that's the fantastic part about AI and ML. And really relying on that as the future over our gut instinct.
Oh,
and
yeah, yeah, go ahead, Rich.
Yeah, so I think the other key, is so as we talked about the people piece and where and how you can leverage it, but the data becomes really important too. And this is something that data and management of data is something that retailers have been notoriously bad at for
Yep.
years. But now, the data quality and the accuracy of attribution that you assign to products, customer data, market data becomes incredibly important. And one of the things, we if you talk about bias, and this was an experience I actually had at the Met, and the Met was trying, the Metropolitan Museum of Art was trying to think about different ways to set up taxonomy on their website. And so they actually did an experiment with Microsoft where crowdsourcing, they would put images of artworks up in front of folks, and people would categorize it and give it a category. And you would start to come up with different ways of categorizing, because the way we categorize things is based on our bias or how we think it should be categorized. And you got a much richer set of attribution by crowdsourcing and using AI to help do that would inform the taxonomy and have people experience the collection in a completely different way. The other thing, customer data, how do you systematize it? And there are all kinds of different sources, and you want to leverage all of it. If you're, you want to get your CRM data, stuff in your loyalty program, social media, anything that you can put together to get a view of the customer, but it has to be systematized. What I have found so far in my experiences with this, because when the retail business started to scale, people tried to put it in simple packages so it was easier to deal with, especially when you got into big store counts like 800 stores and so on and so forth. So there is this tendency to oversimplify and exclude data that could be relevant. The great thing about AI is it can do lots of things and spot a lot of patterns. But to do that, you have to have a complete data set. So you don't want to restrict it. And here's the interesting thing: when we started talking about how we were going to build a data model to do this at the client that I'm working at now, who happens to be a medical retailer in the vision care industry, they started to apply their gut assumptions and the conclusions that they had already built in building the data model. And of course, if you restrict the data model, the conclusion you're going to get is the conclusion that you already have, and you're going to miss all the juice that's out there. So, what we started to do is think about taking a holistic approach. We wanted to get as complete a picture of customer data and profile attributes to help drive segmentation. We did the same thing with market attributes and product attributes. And, in their case, because it's mostly physical retail, we tied it to a store. But if you were e-commerce, you'd probably tie it to a zip code or something that would be the key. But you're trying to triangulate and put all of those pieces together into a coherent story.
But those are all great points you're making, Rich and Anjali, you too. But I want to go just one step further from my own kind of simple mind. And Anjali, start with you. AI and machine learning do promise to radically improve the customer experience. Your conversations really talk around that, but just real briefly, how is it going to improve the customer experience?
Sure. We're all consumers here today, whether that's going to the grocery store, we want to go to the mall, cruising the internet. We want to be able to find whatever that desired item is, right, at the moment that we want, in the location that we want, whether that's in person or virtually and shipped to our door. So you think about, the gold star consumer experience, it's how do we actually get that to actually happen in real life? So, when we think about our Apple Pay, double clicking on our phone, that's something that's enabled, through it being on that website in their DC, hopefully a regional DC that's closer to your zip code, and will get to you within 5 to 7 business days or under. So really, this AI helps to sense and shape that demand, right? And it predicts the consumer preferences that Rich is kind of speaking to in terms of attributes. Attributes, whether, in the vision care world, is that a tortoise shell eyeglass? Is that going to be something where bifocal lenses? It gets down to that granular level and pulls in all of these elements that might seem a little arbitrary, but they ultimately help really have a more accurate forecast, and helps that retailer execute a 5-star, gold star consumer experience. So that's in very simple layman terms, but I think we can all really understand how that affects our everyday experience shopping and how we feel.
Oh, that's good. That's very good. Rich, you want to add anything to that?
Well, sure. I think AI can be used pretty much everywhere on the customer journey. Everywhere from like a merchandise strategy in terms of how you conceive what's going to work, and understanding your customer and positioning of your assortment and your assortment strategy, all the way to assortment planning in terms of localizing, personalizing the assortment, optimizing it. I way back when, and this was back before they started calling it AI and machine learning, when it was predictive analytics, but at Chico's, we were using the SAS customer data miner to target and identify how different classes of customers responded to promotion, and started to experiment with personalized offers to different classes of customers. So, that's a use of it. I think everybody's familiar with Amazon and how the website presents differently to you, Robin, than it would to me, because it knows who we are and what we've done in the past, and orders and presents the products and puts us on different landing pages. So that's a use of AI.
Yeah.
Demand forecasting, and actually I think one of the big things people have been talking about lately, with unified commerce, omni-channel, but fulfillment, getting the inventory placed in where a customer intends to pick it up, and also forecasting supply using the supply chain. I think they're just about anything that you can think of on the customer journey, AI can be applied.
Yeah, yeah, Anjali, hold on one second. I got to throw this in here about Amazon. I've said that they know what the working mom with 2 kids who lives in the northeast corner of Keokuk, Iowa. They know what brand of jeans she wears. They know what cereal she eats in the morning, and on and on and on. So it's incredible what these technologies can do. So, Anjali, will you give me some comments on that? How these technologies, are enabling a smarter merchandise strategy? I mean, Rich touched on that a little bit, but the three key questions are, simply who is the customer, what are they buying, and why are they buying? So please enlighten us a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. The merchandising strategy spans, as I mentioned, earlier, from the beginning of the product, right? And when we think about AI, it starts there. So your design team is trying to understand who the customer is, and they're using all this market intelligence to understand, okay, are they being influenced through Instagram, Facebook, depending on maybe their demographic. And then also, there's so much data out there that it's seeing which website you've just left. You think about all your cookies, the cookie trail of data that you're leaving throughout your journey online, and then it also feeds to your phone. So really, you think about the beginning of that product cycle, that's really where the first touch point is in the merchandise strategy. And whether that would be, how many options do I need in a particular style? Do I need to have 7 options of a basic t-shirt, or just 3? Does she really only want white, black, navy, a pop of pink or red? in a very simplistic way. And that gets down to when you get into the buying and the planning part of the merchandising strategy, where you want to make sure you have a financially sound plan that brings in all of these components, right? SKU rationalization, how do we really enable AI to get the optimal amount of SKU offer in a store? And that really just hits the bottom line in terms of margin erosion. You want to make sure you're not getting too much on that clearance rack at the end of the season. So that is very key. Rich mentioned demand forecasting, which is another component of the merchandise strategy. How do we get a smarter forecast, a more intelligent forecast with all of this rich data pulled in there? And then really, I think this is like the last part of the baton on the race, and you're thinking about the Olympics, the allocation and the replenishment. A retailer can nail all of those components in the beginning of the product strategy and then not send it to the right store or the right DC regional center, and it's ultimately not going to be purchased. And that's all the way down to a size level, if you think about the store and the size level. So all these great nuggets in terms of the merchandising strategy can be really enabled with this sort of technology.
Very good. Very clear explanation. Rich, with these new protective privacy policies, why are retailers in a great position to leverage customer data, and how can data be used to deliver premium personalization and customization?
Well, so actually, I mean, this has been a trend for a while. Social media and the things that you could get from social media profiles have become more and more restrictive. So a lot of the things that you used to be able to do with Facebook or Google Analytics, you're increasingly not being able to do that. But where I think retailers have a unique opportunity is, let's leverage your own data. And I think it's really important to make sure that you're mining fully your customer data asset and investing in things like loyalty programs. I think everybody knows about Amazon and Prime, and basically Amazon's strategy is to monetize fully their platform by monetizing customer data, and Prime is the machine that feeds the beast, and they keep figuring out ways to leverage that data. But even way back when I was at Chico's in the early 2010s consulting, they had a loyalty program called Passport, and they actually had they knew 95% of their transaction file, because 95% of their transaction file was invested in their loyalty program. So, that's a huge opportunity. When I was at the Met, the membership program could give you huge insights across a whole spectrum of behaviors, because, it's the type of art they were interested in, the restaurants that they went to, what they could be interested in the store. So, one of the things I became really good at while I was at the Met was selling memberships, because it was information that I could use in my challenge to reposition the merchandising strategy and the assortment at the Met. At the client that I'm working with now, the vision care client, they have detailed patient records. 80% of the purchases begin with an exam. And not only that, they know the insurance program they have. By knowing the insurance program, they know the benefits that are tied to it. They know the eligibility windows and when the benefits expire. So they have actually been using an econometric modeling team for a long period of time, and their demand patterns are incredibly predictable because of that. And part of what got them on this journey was they've been sitting on this huge customer data asset, and they're trying to figure out the best way to monetize it. And And actually, I'm working with O9, is the software provider that's helping us do that.
Great. So Anjali, you want to add anything to that?
I think Rich brought up quite a bit of great points. And also when you think about, loyalty programs, does also help you localize those promotions a bit, what's responsive. Perhaps, a retailer might want to identify a test opportunity. And then, when you think about machine learning, those are opportunities all the way downstream of what future promotions you can do. Market your basket. Actually, you can identify what's going on in the basket with the loyalty programs as well, which is pretty key when you think about your promotion strategies in stores. Are they bundling things together, tops and bottoms, mix and match? It also helps from a merchandising strategy. So, data is king or queen.
Yeah,
Really.
data.
Mhm.
So you guys are making some great points. I'm getting my own education here. So, all this does sound great, and it is. However, who is responsible for the execution of these strategies? Data management needs to become kind of a core competency and focus on the business to obviously ensure quality and accuracy. So what's the best use case for how a retail brand, can implement this, and what talent do they need to make it work? And so let's start with you, Anjali, and then Rich, you can jump in and give us your take.
Sure. I've definitely gone through this a few times in terms of, implementing a new solution or process and data. I really am a firm believer that this is not just one particular area of the organization's responsibility. It needs to be kind of publicized and shared, that it impacts everyone all the way throughout the organization. Design, how they're managing it in a system such as maybe PLM, all the way down to your planners, how they're putting it in terms of the hierarchy. So every single function within an organization, I believe, is responsible to make this a data-rich strategy and harmonizing it. In terms of the quality and accuracy, I think once that message is really shared, it's understanding, okay, how do you harmonize the data? How do you identify what needs to be improved? There needs to be almost like a baseline of these are the acceptable things to do, and policing it quite a bit. I know in some roles I've had, whether that's a business intelligence group, merchandising operations group, they've really helped facilitate that process, which I know has been pretty key. Every organization is different, but I have found that is incredibly helpful because they ultimately are helping build reports, manage the systems or solutions, and further implementations in the future. So I've always found them to be a very strong resource in my past history.
Rich?
I totally agree. I think Anjali hit it right on the head. One of the real key things to make this work is with data management being at a premium. Every retailer needs to decide that they need to have a strong MIO department or merchandise operations department that really owns the data and makes sure that the quality and completeness is there. And I think one of the things you'll start to see happen, and certainly this client that I'm working with right now is considering this, where you would basically take your develop a high-powered business analytics group, and that MIO group would actually sit under them or with them, because there's a natural synergy there. If they're going to be trying to exploit and build better analytics, and they're dependent on the data, they're the ones that are going to kind of know where the gaps are and what are the things that they need to do to round it out. So I definitely see in the future a merging of the analytics group and the MIO group down the road. I think data scientists are going to be important, and you're going to see more and more people try to hire data scientists into the retail business. But just as important as the data scientist is the translator. people that can actually take the output or the insights of the data scientist and translate it into everyday language that retailers understand, or tell the story in a way that is visceral for a merchant or for a planner. It comes at it from their world. So I think people that are able to translate this into business terms, that's going to be really important.
Yeah.
I think there's an education process for the organization, so I think statistical concepts and statistical modeling concepts are things that everybody in the organization are going to need to get fluent on. And, it's going to need to be trained in the organization. And I do think that probably every function needs to have some kind of analytics specialist on their team that's able to work with the science, but also translate it back into terms for their function.
Well, you both are in many different ways are really saying that the entire organization has to buy into it. And Richard just mentioned you got to be educated. And, it's like integrating the entire supply chain from source to consumption anyway. So based on all of this that you guys are talking about, how is the workforce of the future going to look different? I think you both touched on a little bit, at least talked about the functions themselves, but what are the skill sets that are required? Rich, you mentioned, data, people that are, skilled in using data and analyzing are going to be in demand, but, which functions, which processes. So, and how do we get talented data scientists to choose retail? Retail is a career. Anjali, you want to start out on that?
Yeah, sure. I think that, in terms of what might look a bit different, I know retail has always been a fast moving industry. However, I think the last 2 years have shown us that agility is it's just key. You have to be agile. And I think that when we think about bringing in more of these digital technologies into retail, which is kind of a new concept for these functions, essentially, especially within the merchandising world, planning and allocation, that you will have to be agile. You have to embrace this new mindset. So I think there's a lot of soft skills that have to be brought into the change management focus when we think about an organization kind of evolving quite a bit. And in terms of data scientists, I can't agree more. I think that there's a huge opportunity here that it seems very unconventional to retail, but if you think about it, it's really no different than perhaps maybe an investor kind of moving over into retail or vice versa. You're investing money in clothes. The concepts are the same, right? So you think about data science, that's something that is a huge unlock for the retail industry, especially as we look into more intelligent forecasting and being a little bit more, being smarter, essentially. I think another thing to think about is AI and ML in a lot of cases is in this black box we think of, right? Like what's driving the output? I know, Rich, right? I always had this question, well, how is the calculation getting me to this particular point? And I think really another area of opportunity when you're bringing in this transformation is how does the end user really interact with AI and ML on this journey? And kind of, what I love about '09 is we don't really necessarily have this black box, point of view. It's what particular drivers are impacting that forecast, and you have the visibility. And I think that that's key. I think especially as you're going on this crawl, walk, run journey of bringing in technology into your organization. Rich, I don't know if you've got anything to add.
No,
there.
I'm really glad you brought up that last point, because I think '09 is particularly good at not having this pure black box and how it presents in the interface, and they spend a lot of time, they care about it. So, obviously, I think the change management office is going to be also a key capability that retailers have to take in as they're going through this change. But, actually, this is a real life '09 story on the client I'm working with. So, there's a big part of this where there is a data scientist group that's been assigned to this and has been working with the data to help us build the data model and build out the solution and the software to present this information effectively to the client. And the thing that was kind of interesting, this is probably pretty normal, when he started, and he's interacting with the group, it was all about the statistical concepts, and he's showing the numbers, and this confidence interval is not a good confidence interval, and it got very difficult for people to relate to it. But now, we were having a conversation, it was actually just this week, and he said, I hear you, Rich, and what you're saying would be a richer answer, but I don't know that it will present well to the user for them to use it, and maybe we want to actually adapt it this way because it'll be more intuitive for the business user, and this is how we can have it present on the other side. And I just thought that was fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it is. We're talking about, the entire organization has to buy into it, talking about educating them. Got to be technical expertise extending throughout all the functions. So, so it's not that we turn the whole thing over to digital systems and the data wizards, right? Rich, you kind of made a clear picture of the fact that there's got to be a good balance between art and science.
Right.
So
it's both, and I think as you go through it, this is a tool, this is decision support, this is an additional set of insights, and and it's critical. And then as you get people to embrace it, so this is another example from the vision care client, but they wanted to do more sophisticated customer segmentation, and really, it's getting the clustering and segmenting your stores appropriately, and and having the right data model that does that, and the right set of analytics that translates into an effective merchandising strategy. Well, and this is where you learn stuff when you try to do it. It's a new toy, so we all went for the optimal answer and had a multivariable, really sophisticated model that we presented to the team, and they just were challenging it, intimidated by it, thought they were losing control, had all of the reasons why this wasn't going to work. They were immediately afraid of, well, how am I going to answer to leadership, because now I've created this terrible inventory liability because the way I sort the stores is completely changed. And I said, okay, that was the wrong way to go. So, this is what I meant in the very beginning when I said you got to go slow to go fast.
Yeah.
So we started with something that they had already figured out on their own. They had established a strong correlation between the insurance that a customer had and their propensity to buy price points tied to the insurance. So, one of the insurance has a rich set of benefits. They tend to buy higher price point merchandise. Other ones, are budget insurance. They bought lower price point eyeglasses. So I said, okay, they already know this. So we're going to just set that experiment up exactly in the AI engine. We're just going to do a 2 variable. We're just going to test on insurance and price band and do the clustering on that basis. And it revealed the conclusions, exactly the way they understood them. And you see how it presented? It's saying exactly that equation that But let's look at, the things that the data scientist had shared with us. You see, the confidence interval here is only 42%. So our clusters definitely are onto something, and it's good in that sense. but we're missing out on a lot of juice. So then we did the more expansive model and said, okay, you see now that we're getting a richer set of insights. So that same cluster group where it had low insurance and a high proportion of Medicaid, and they bought low price point eyeglasses, which, you know, your gut would have told you was the right thing to do. You would have got that from your gut. They also bought expensive designer sunglasses. And that's an insight that they wouldn't have gotten without the AI. And then when you looked at it and you looked at the profile, and then you go and you talk to the people running the stores, it actually is intuitive. It's like, oh, I get that. So yes, they save their money and they rock it in something that's aspirational for them, and because of is the ethnic makeup and the psychographic makeup, they would be interested in designer sunglasses. So they rock it and save their money to do that. But to meet their necessities, they use their insurance and they stay within the bounds of their low budget insurance.
Interesting little narrative. Yeah, that's great. So, Anjali, what is kind of the biggest mistake that organizations make in this journey to digital transformation? What advice would you give them?
I think of it as it's a long game. You can't just approach it like it's going to be an overnight transformation or transition. And I think, Rich has kind of touched on all the reasons why. Just even in that last example, it's key. How do you get the end user to understand that their gut, they have something there, right? But there's something to build on top of that to take your business even further with this additional assistance, essentially, right? Support is the way you should think about it. So I think, depending on, where the organization sits with the maturity, their baseline, how much overhauling is there to the process? The level of automation, which we can only hope is a goal for the organization, and also the daily responsibilities of each particular end user. That's a lot of change that's happening. So play the long game. I think that try not to fall back on old bad habits. Excel is probably utilized by 60-70% of retailers out there, and that's just what they're willing to admit. they do it offline and they drop their plans into the system as almost a place to hold it as a record keeping. But try not to fall back on those old bad habits and be open to change. Once you start implementing a solution, I think it's trusting the process. And really organizations kind of checking in with those users throughout the process, engage them, find the champions within your business units to really get in there, do user acceptance testing, and kind of bring along their teams. I think that's where you will see high adoption rates. Engage, whatever company that you are using for your solution and the partners. I think that's also key. They want to see your organization succeed and thrive and grow and build the business. That's a win for everybody. So I think understanding that vision and long term.
Yeah. I can't tell you how often I still hear leaders in the industry saying, just do what we've been doing, but do it better. Well, that that dog is not going to hunt. That, no way. So, Rich, I don't know, what is the right balance between a data-driven business and human element, the art and the science? I don't know. You can't quantify that.
I don't know if you can quantify it. I think the key thing, and it kind of relates to your other the question you just asked in terms of the mistake. And I agree with everything that Anjali says, but I also think the big mistake that people make is they are touting, and they're so focused on the bright shiny object, which is the AI/ML, is that they forget about the human element, and that for some of these people, well, this is existential. For me, I mean, what's it mean? You bring in AI/ML, is my value depreciated? Am I not going to have a job because you think I can be replaced a little bit by the thing. And I think the first thing you got to do is emphasize that, no, you're very valuable, and we actually want to free up some of your time to engage in higher value activities, and identify what those things are, because there are things that a human can do that a machine can never do, but
Yep.
the two things together can turbocharge your business and give you exponential gains. That that it's the old story of the sum is greater than the parts.
Yep.
The sum of the parts.
Synergy.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So Anjali, you want to add to that at all?
No, I think, people
Okay.
culture is definitely important. And I think that we've kind of touched on that along the conversation, that without people, these initiatives fall flat, essentially. You have to get their buy-in, and that's why I think having strong champions within the organization is pretty key.
Yeah, so it's a great conversation, and obviously this transformation in so many ways is going to be very complex, and is complex, and obviously can go off the rails unless it's part of a holistic strategy in running the business, which both of you have really kind of touched on. So I don't know if we just touched the tip of the iceberg. We probably have, but what can you guys add as the most important factors to make digital transformation sustainable, I guess, rather than how to make it happen, how to make it so it sticks and it goes forward?
I see Rich is he's pondering here.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, lead off, because you're ready to, and it's actually making me think some. So go ahead.
I think that when you try to bite off too much at one time, that can be very overwhelming, and that's very simplistic to say, but in personal life, professional life, and I think it's how do you make these tiny progressions, right? And I think that's what would make it sustainable. It's prioritizing, understanding how much your organization can handle at one time, and being honest about it, and being agile. You sprint and say, okay, this worked, this did not work, and you reassess. And you might have to adapt your strategy throughout that process. But I think that ultimately is what will make it sustainable. You're not going to just have it all done in one moment. It's little bits at a time.
Very, very good. Rich, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, this is related to what Anjali said, and I think what is sustainable in retail is winning. Things that win are sustainable. So I think it's being smart in terms of your approach, and making sure that you can get wins on the scoreboard and get tangible results that you can point to as successes. And as the successes continue to build and grow, more and more people will adapt and start to leverage it. And then, when you get into the really cool phases, when people started inventing new ways of using it, or apply AI in ways that you hadn't thought of, because basically I'm learning as I go, and the subject of this conversation has been what I've experienced so far, but I know that it's a huge field, and there's a lot more left to explore. So I think the other thing is it's going to evolve. And by the way, AI ML is the current branding of something that started a long time ago. I mean, like back in the early 2010s, it was predictive analytics, and there have been all kinds of different applications of technology, and I don't know what it's going to be tomorrow, but I know that we're going to be talking about something new tomorrow.
That is right on point. Something will definitely be new tomorrow. I mean, it's bizarre, but it's all positive if the industry can embrace it all, and can, get through it and make the transformation and make it sustainable. Unfortunately, there are a lot of them out there that aren't going to be able to do that. But, this has been a great and illuminating conversation for me. It really has. And as Rich knows, Anjali, you and I haven't met before, but Rich knows I talk to a lot of major C-level people and senior people out there. And I'm going to tell you something. Maybe there's one or two of them that are into what you guys have been talking about for the last 40 or 50 minutes. And so many of them don't understand it. And so many of them are afraid to make the changes, as you guys know. But as Anjali said, it's a long game, and the ones that understand that are going to succeed and do very well. It is a brave new world out there. So let's bring Kathy back to weigh in from an academic perspective. Catherine, what are you teaching students in terms of how digital transformation is the new model?
Yeah.
And I'm sure you have questions for Rich and Anjali.
Oh my gosh, I am jumping out of my seat here. It is so hard for a professor to sit here quietly listening and not weighing in on every single comment, because so much of what you say is relevant for our students. But what we do have to remember is we're taking our students from, directly out of high school and teaching them the basics, starting with assortment planning and strategy and product selection, and what is the markdown and promotional strategies, and who is the customer. So remember, we're laying the foundation from the very beginning here in our first years. And then we add in, that this part of our business, it's just a natural. It really is. It's just a natural to have either predictive analytics or whatever AI companies are using. I mean, unfortunately, in many cases, not unfortunately, but remember, we're dealing with all retailers here and a lot of small retailers too. And I guess, Anjali, this is a good question for you. In many, many cases, it's not a Macy's or a big company that has all this, or a Chico's. Rich, you had talked about Chico's. I know they use First Insight and, predictive analytics. Not all companies have that, and we're preparing our students to go out there to all these different companies. So I guess my one question is, with the smaller brands who are not using this kind of data, how do we help prepare them too for those businesses? They're still using Excel. What you said.
Yeah,
Excel.
they're not
Excel.
right?
We're trying to even teach our students how to be really proficient in Excel. Many companies want that, and they really want that.
Yes, and just in terms of interacting with smaller companies, they do often try to build out, a macro and VBA and try to automate what they can. This isn't necessarily external knowledge, but they're trying to do automation within a G Sheet or Excel spreadsheet. So there is that some sort of level of sophistication, I will call it, that if they don't have the funding for perhaps a system to do that for them. And I think really just preparing students for where this next wave is going is key, because I think, that's important when you think about almost like the next generation of retail. We've seen such a boom in D2C, if you think of direct to consumer over the last 2 to 3 years. And there's a huge appetite, right, to start to migrate in this direction. How do they leverage perhaps maybe, Google Analytics for that information? So, I think that there are a lot of ways that these smaller companies can thrive with your students being exposed to what's happening. I think that's key. Even if the company that they intern at or potentially, get their first job at isn't able to provide that experience for them, because then they can influence perhaps maybe, external components to bring in, not in a system per se, but to at least get brains jogging in that direction. I think that's important.
Okay, great.
I totally agree with what Anjali's saying there. So I had the privilege of leading the Metropolitan Museum of Art's retail operation, but as you can guess,
Right.
it seems like it's a big deal because it's the Met. It's not a big business, right? And I learned how to trade goats and stuff for whatever I got, and I think the and I would leverage whatever I could that the museum did in terms of studies and everything. But what people don't realize is AI/ML is everywhere. All right, and I'll give you an example where it's available for free. So I had a situation where the retail business had become irrelevant. It had become irrelevant because the customer base in the store was aging and literally dying, a bunch of them, especially in the direct-to-consumer business. But the museum had gotten younger, and so the customer I had was so disconnected from the museum visitor. It wasn't funny. I had to do something radical to reposition the merchandising strategy, the assortment, and everything. So I looked at the survey that the Met does. They do it every year basically, and it talked about, well, what was one of the key things that customers wanted to do if they were going to buy something. Well, they wanted something to commemorate their visit. All right, so then I said, okay. So I went into Google, not even Google Analytics. I went into Google and I typed the question, what are the icons of the Met? Because I figured that if they want to commemorate their visit, the stuff they're going to be most interested in for merchandising concepts are the most popular attractions that they would have seen in the museum. And there I had a beautiful ranked list of the top 50 things people want to see in the museum. And then we debated it as a merchandising team, and we picked 30 of them, and they became the platform for building merchandising concepts around and collections around. And it was incredibly successful right out of the gate. I mean, we hit the bullseye pretty quickly, and that is like AI that's available to anybody anytime.
Of course, and that's super fun. That sounds like you had a blast doing that, right? Really fun. And from our level here at FIT, we teach our students to think critically and to analyze a business. And we actually have added courses and are continuing to partner with industry, which Anjali, I would love to talk to you offline about that. But, to partner with industry for whatever is next, and really help our students understand that, looking forward and looking at trends, all of that is so important. And having the predictive analytics or having the data for it and being able to critically read it and analyze it, that's another thing that's super important for us to teach here, because no matter where you go, I think you're going to be working with different software, whatever that may be, whether it's your company or another company. And it does become hard, and I guess this can go into a question. It does become hard when we focus on one particular set of one company, one set of software, or one particular program, because we want to be able to send our students out to be able to adopt any program based on what that company has.
Yeah, I think that's important. From my experience, I've dabbled in quite a few. I won't name all of them, but concepts are important, right? It's setting the foundation, and some things change. I think our ability to how the customer shops today is even advanced from 15, 20 years ago. Of I go online, I look up my zip code, and I'm able to then purchase and then drive up and pick that item up. That that didn't exist a while ago, but I think aside from that, I think the foundation is very key. How do you run your open to buy? That's going to be, pretty straightforward. Doesn't matter what system you're in, your range plan process, segmentation and all that. I think there's huge opportunity to dig further now compared to where we were in the past. But I can't agree more, Catherine. I think it's very key to focus on concepts.
Yeah. And our students, of course, they're really digital native, and that's easy for us. We love to work with anything that has to do with influencers and social media, and that's the fun part here. We love that piece of it. And remember, we're a fashion school, so we're interested in fashion and convincing our students that, data and the science of all that data is important can sometimes be a little challenging, because it's not a fashion show, it's not a runway, right? But it's just as important. And we are in the business. I'm in the Patty Baker, Jane Patty Baker School of Business and Technology. So we are teaching the business piece of that. And, sometimes it's not as sexy as we'd like it to be, but that's okay. We try to make it sexy.
I think what makes it a little bit more fun is the fact that, once you get your foundational, your core business, what's driving the volume, right? You think about it might be a little bit less sexy, but then it affords your organization to do all the fun fluff and do those great marketing initiatives. So, you think about the data being rich on what's going to make your company money, and then it allows you to kind of step out and do all these fun side initiatives.
Yeah. And we at FIT, we realize, of course, that all this data analysis is the future and AI is the future, and we are here and ready to adopt. So I'm so grateful that I was able to host this program with Robin today and meet you both.
I'll tell you,
Catherine,
also, keep teaching those fundamentals, because if this underscores anything, the fundamentals are probably even more important now than they were, because if having a misstep there just makes the situation worse when you put high-powered analytics behind it. If you can't drive a Chevy, you can't drive a Ferrari, right?
Right. And I appreciate that, because it is true. You need that foundation, to get to the next level. And we really work hard at FIT to give them that foundation so that they can be comfortable with reading and analyzing all these new analytics that are coming out.
Yeah, and Catherine, it's been my honor to host this with you as well. And I think we had two great minds on this subject. Yeah. I mean, fantastic. I really have, I was well educated today. Thank you, Rich and Anjali, really. And Rich, I know you and I will be talking down the road. And one thing I want to say is that, when you think about it, macro, technology is just a tool. And I think you said that, Rich, up front, Anjali, I think you may have said it. It's a tool. When you think about it, marketing 101 hasn't changed. And that's what you're saying about the fundamentals. You've got to have the fundamentals, but technology just is an awesome enabler and accelerator of all those fundamental things, right? I mean, that's really what we're saying here. And Rich and Anjali, one final thing, and Rich, you can go first. Please tell our audience how they can get a hold of you. And then Anjali, you as well.
Sure, you can reach me personally at by sending me an email, rpedott@columbusconsulting.com, or you can even use my cell phone, which is 813-777-5251. And do visit us on our website, www.columbusconsulting.com.
Anjali?
Yeah. Please feel free to reach out to me at anjali.burkins@09solutions. It's ANJALI.BURKINS@09solutions. And also feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm active on there. Drop me a message. Would love to speak with you on there as well. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here, you guys. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.